everyone. My name is Chastity, aka the Luminary Luna Beans,
And I'm Emily, the fine art medium.
and we're two mediums that specialize in the paranormal. Our purpose is to shed light on what goes bump in the night. That's why we call this podcast YouTube channel
Fly to midnight.
Lamb.
Bing, ying, 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 ying.
All right, guys. So we have a super interesting topic today. So this is one of our educational videos. So we're going kind of through season one origins of the OG Lights at Midnight podcast. So we're kind of bringing back a little bit of the educational stuff. One of the topics that has been brought up to us recently is spiritual spouses. And there are many different terms and relationships that signify a spiritual spouse amongst different religions and spiritualities. And what we've tried to do is give you guys a general overview today of what a spiritual spouse is, their purpose, the signs that you have a spiritual spouse, and actually kind of ways that you can kind of get rid of it.
Hmm.
Yes. So basically, that's going to be the gist of our episode today. I definitely want to say that we want to break this down into people that are in relationships and not in relationships. We're going to try to give you the difference. If we say something, it's generally geared towards, can be both sometimes, right? But there is sometimes a difference in having a spiritual spouse and how they come in, being in a relationship and not in a relationship. This may make some people uneasy because this is going to be a topic that is definitely for 18 plus. So, and some of the words and stuff that we use we're going to be very careful with because per YouTube policy, but there's going to be a lot of explicit things talked about more than normal in this episode. So if that's not something, if you're not old enough to be here, please, maybe wait a little bit before you watch.
Hmm. Yep. And we will be talking about uncomfortable situations. So if you have any traumas geared in those areas, maybe skip this video or don't. You might learn something. I don't know.
Absolutely. And we'll be as gentle as possible. But yeah, definitely we're going to be bringing up some stuff. So mature audiences only and prepared. So, guys, first, what we're going to do is just simply give a very simple definition of what a spirit spouse is. So, a spirit spouse is a spiritual attachment, generally of the explicit kind, sometimes not so much, depending. And they could be anything from a lower vibrational, either earthbound human spirit or a lower vibrational spirit. And that can range anywhere from, again, human all the way to even demonic. And that would be your incubus and succubuses. So we have talked about incubuses and succubuses in detail in some of our episodes, and I believe it would be in the diabolical episode, season one origins, which I think is episode 10 on season one. So you can definitely go in there and check that out. We talk about it all throughout the podcast in the first season, different times. But yes, so I just want to leave that there. And then what is the purpose of a spiritual spouse? So, the purpose of a spiritual spouse, what is their function? So, it can vary greatly, kind of from person to person based on their situation, but generally it all works the same. Okay. So, if you're in a relationship, the spiritual spouse can come in between your spouse. Their purpose is to have you all to themselves. Okay, they want your attention, they want your affection, and this is a spiritual relationship on the other side. So it can manifest in a multitude of different ways, generally while you sleep. Okay, and this can happen for obviously relationship and non-relationships. They feed off of your energy, so they want to kind of consume your energy, have you all to themselves, and kind of start messing up things in your life and your relationships. And that could be preventing you from getting in a relationship, or that could be keeping you away from your current relationship in marriage or very serious ones. and also in darker for darker purposes rather. So people that brought upon a spiritual spouse. So there are people that do ceremonies and rituals that bring spiritual spouses into their life, people that practice darker occult art, magic, basically. And they will bring this, their purpose is to come in and spice up their sexual life or spice up whether they're single or not. You can break it into a relationship between one or two people. And this again, this is on the first part I talked about with lighter side, people that aren't really wanting it, and then you have people that actually want these relationships. And they bring it in to spice things up or make people very attracted to you. So those are some of the purposes for spiritual spouses. So depending on what side of the scale you fall on here, it has different implications.
I want to add too, like, I can't remember if you said it in the beginning, but it is an emotional type of attachment. And so your emotions and the vibrations that you carry based off of your emotions and traumas can pretty much attract one. But a lot of times we notice a pattern between people that have suffered through abuse, whether or not it was in a relationship or growing up with family members or just abuse anywhere, really. Um, but a lot of it has to do with mindset, personality, traits, behaviors, the vibration you carry. Um, I also see a lot of like people that are desperate. So like how you said, there are people who want to spice up their love life, but you also have people that crave love so much because they don't get it anywhere else. And so they want that companionship, not realizing what they're actually going to get. Um, but so I know, like, as a good example, for people who are lonely and they just put out into the universe that desperation, it's kind of like it can attract somebody or something, whether it's earthbound or lower descended, to that to fulfill that need. So this is where you can attract entities or spirits, especially earthbound spirits, who maybe they might like a specific person and for whatever reason, and if you're pretty much putting out that type of energy, they can attach to you and feed off of you based on that. And then going along with like a relationships, whether you're married or you're just in a regular like relationship, and it doesn't matter the kind of a relationship in terms of like if it's male, 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 female, hetero, non-hetero, like it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter the gender either. It can happen in all sorts of relationships and gender dynamics. So the question is, how does a person attract a spiritual spouse? You can get it from another person. So let's say you're with your significant other and they have issues, whatever that may be, and they have their own spiritual spouse. Sometimes, if you're somebody that has a higher vibration or any kind of like energy that they might be attracted to or like, you can become a victim of it as well. And then like you have mental health issues, other addictions, the P one where you're looking up nasty things online, you can read between the lines. You can bring them in that way as well.
Yes, and Emily, she's got some good points there. One of the things that can happen into adding to picking up from somebody else, you don't have to just be in a relationship to pick up a spiritual spouse from someone else. It can be against your will at any age in life. So if you were abused in particular ways, you can pick that up at that point of entry. That's kind of like a point of entry. Also, too, dreams. So it's kind of like a rolling thing. Let's say, it's natural to be aroused, right? It's natural to want those connections with people. But if it gets excessive and out of control, so it's like, that can be with using different words here, pleasuring yourself. excessive, out of control, with or without corn. Put the, we'll say corn for now.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be with or without that. So constant needs to do that. And like Emily was saying, having that desire and want for somebody that we leave a void or a open is the low vibrational feelings and low vibrational actions of others. And when we share our energy with somebody, whether in a relationship or not, and sometimes we end up getting in marriages with people that have this type of energy, even though we love them, that spirit will bring in that energy to the relationship and allow it to happen because the spirit is actually feeding from the interactions between two people. So that's how it gets energy. And then when it's ready and it's had enough, it will try to get you out of those relationships. So if you're in a long-term partnership or marriage, it can actually bring you in and then get a hold of you too if it's from the other person, or even if you brought it in, and it'll eventually make you where you do not want to have those types of interactions with your partner. It'll make you get to that point where, like, tonight's the night. Okay, let's go, baby. And then when you get there, there is some type of dysfunction on either end. Now, let me just preface this. These are just some signs, and I think I have a couple more to talk about, but I do want to say this while it's on my mind. It's important to understand that these things can happen on occasion, or you go through bouts and periods with your partner where things may not be the same. And that doesn't always mean you have a spiritual attachment. Like, you need to take a lot of these things we're talking about and check these boxes. And one of the things is dreams. So how do they come in? They come in through your dreams, because if you're not an intuitive person, and if you're an intuitive person with a lighter perspective that is working towards positivity and higher vibrational purposes, you can generally identify this most of the time. They can still hide, and sometimes this stuff happens so slowly you won't even know. But you'll notice there's some type of dysfunction between your connection with the other individual or partner that you have. And the dreams, you'll start dreaming about other people, or you might start seeing a reoccurring character, especially when it comes to a human spiritual spouse. Because certain things and religions don't talk about a actual perversion from a human spirit that is deceased that will try to create that symbiotic emotional relationship with you. And see, there's kind of a borderline here, because sometimes it's not always sexual. Sometimes they do this anyways, and they truly think like you are theirs, like they married you. And there's a fine line to walk there. Like, recently I saw a medium talk about that, and the spirit was talking about, you're my wife. And the medium laughed it off because she joked about it with it, but it kind of freaked me out a little bit, because I'm like, I know that I don't know. It could have ended up causing problems if the spirit's not taken. I hope this medium, I'm sure she's aware of this, right? But, there's something different. Let me make this very clear too. There is no sexual relationships going on between you and a higher vibrational being of light. The only sexual relationships that will be had within the spirit will be between you and a darker source, or a lower, not necessarily darker, but yeah, darker, but also a lower vibrational source that is not of an ascended light path. There is an ascended dark path too, or a descended. We typically use the ascended for light and descended for dark. That is for explaining purposes, if that makes sense. So your dreams, you'll have reoccurring dreams. Is it normal to have very sexual dreams sometimes? Yes, it is. But this is like a reoccurring thing. That's super important. And marking your dreams, or seeing, or sometimes it can be against your will in your dream. Sometimes you're not wanting to do that. I've actually had a spirit try to start doing things like that with me in the dream. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. Don't touch me. And that is the beginnings of them trying to leech my energy. So, yeah, that's another way. But there's different signs and stuff. We'll talk about the leeching of the energy too,
Mm-hmm.
Emily. Before we move to signs, like physical signs or stuff like that, would you want to add anything else?
Yeah, so like you were talking about the different ones that could do this and how ascended ones won't do it. Um, I can't remember if you said this or not, but so when you're talking about the different kinds of negative entities or spirits, that includes human ones too. I mean, kind of already touched upon it, but the ones that will try anyway are the human ones that are negative, and then the darker things that are non-human and further descended and yeah. But I've had similar experiences where something nasty has tried and I was like, back to heck up. Oh hell
Right.
no. And yeah, it's creepy, it's gross, and I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
Right. And again, some of the how they get in and signs will overlap each other, but dreams is one way. And, this, you definitely want to pay attention to the reoccurring dreams. And,
Oh yeah.
if you're conscious in your dreams, that's important, right? So just because you have one of these dreams doesn't mean, excuse me, that you're going to, have a spirit spouse right away. There is a willingness and also how they get in there is some part or again some crack in a trauma, like I call trauma like cracks in the way spirits can like enter in. It's entering in your consciousness. It's some people believe it's in the body. I think it can be both ways or in our aura. There's multiple ways things can get into our existence, and that is generally you can create energetic threads. Like if you're a sensitive person, anybody can create energetic threads. But if you're a highly sensitive person, things like this are going to come after you because you're going to be able to communicate more, and it's kind of tough, but those are some ways that things can definitely get into your life.
hmm And just to add, like the benevolent or I shouldn't say entities, the benevolent spirits and beings, they're not going to because the whole action of that is very 3D. Not saying there's anything wrong with it, but also like if you think about it, you had the archangels who did their thing, the ones that went down on Earth and did those things with humans. Well, what happened when they did that? You have the fallen angels and then the Nephilims and all that stuff. I know people don't 100% believe in the Bible, but I've seen it on the Astrorama. I was shown the whole situation between just like that, what happened there. And I mean, at least with my perspective, it did happen in that way or similar to that way. And so that's why it's like archangels aren't going to do that. And if they do, then you have to question, is it really an archangel or is it maybe a descended being tricking you?
Yes, exactly. And again, higher vibrational beings do not require or want or have the need to come back into the 3D perspective to experience because they are in a place of love and comfort and serenity and peace, right? They don't have the need to connect that way anymore, okay? Lower vibrational beings, they strive to ascend, and the one way that they can get the closest they can get to the light without resolving their issues, or unless they're not allowed back in at all, unless they're completely transformed, is to do it through you. They are able, that is how we have these attachments and these things like come, around or connected to people. Well, when that person passes away, even though you have attachments, like it's safe to say that not everybody that has some type of spiritual attachment is going to go down in the lower astrals. They can be middle vibration, right? There is a difference. By the way, there's a dragonfly in my room just flying around. I forgot about him. He must have stayed in here because he was in here. He just come check me out earlier. It's really weird. But yeah, so oh shoot, I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, the relationship. They try to get back into the 3D because they want to feel and experience love. And there's a multitude of ways, like that they'll do that. And human spirits more or less want that emotional connection. The darker, more demonic spirits, they want it just to mess your life up. They want that lower vibration, connecting yourself with darker energies that only take from you, You might get a benefit for a while, but eventually they take from you. And if they don't get what they want, they will screw your life up. And a spiritual spouse, you would rather, if you come in contact with having a spiritual spouse, you would rather want to deal with a human spiritual spouse than a demonic spiritual spouse, because there are different ways to get rid of, or there's similar ways and they'll go bye bye, I guess, the same way, but it's going to be harder potentially to get rid of a demonic spiritual spouse. And they want complete destruction. Human spirits want more emotional connection based on familiarity of being alive, because they are in lower vibrations and they don't know how to get out. And sometimes a lot of people, some people, when they cross over, they stay the way they were here on earth. So if they are already perversion, nasty, made bad choices, hurt people in life, they don't, unless they resolve all that before they cross over, they stay in that lower vibration and they still want to be dirty, nasty. That's why you have some really messed up hauntings, guys. And it's no different. And some of the things that haunt you, like that can haunt your home or spirits, they will do that to you in your sleep. One thing, well, we'll talk about that next, because I'll save that for signs.
Mm-hmm.
So, Emily, I guess we'll go ahead, unless you have anything else to add, we can move on to the signs that you have a spiritual spouse, which we lightly touched on them, but we're going to kind of go over everything one more time.
Yeah, we can go to the next thing. I So signs, what can happen? So generally, you can have all types of paranormal activity and oppression, and it can play mental, physical, spiritually in your life, but you can have like a haunting. They kind of like share similarities here. So things can move around in your house and of course, and do the sounds and all that. But the thing with spiritual spouses is the nightmares or very explicit dreams. And that could include like I don't know how to say it without
Explosive dreams.
there you go. Or where it's against your will and it's very traumatic, and or play upon the abuses if you've had any abuse trauma in your life. Um, and sometimes you can even feel them physically. I've heard cases where, like our own personal cases, where someone would be laying in the bed and they can feel the movement on the bed next to them, or feel like
Yeah.
they're being spooned,
Or
or
touched.
or touched, or wake up with like bruising on their thighs and have other parts of their body, like more private areas, have issues, bruising, pains, sensations, and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
like the dream thing or the nightmares, a lot of the time too, it's a test to see what they can get away with. And if you don't catch it, or they just keep going, it kind of is their way of knowing, oh yeah, I can get away with this, and just keep
Hmm.
on what they're doing.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I'd like to add, you might say this, but go ahead and just add it. Sleep paralysis, or not being
mhm.
able, not all sleep paralysis, right? But not being able to fully wake up from these dreams and feeling extremely tired when you do wake up from these dreams, like extremely drained or tired, or having more urges and physical urges to want to see more people, make more, like if you're single, you continually want, can't get enough of it. Or if you're in a relationship, it can make you want more of it, but when it comes time to do it, you're completely turned off by your partner in terms of dreams and stuff.
Yep. The
Yeah.
promiscuality, I don't know. I can't English, but exactly.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something else and now I completely forgot. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It can really mess your health up. So not only like the fatigue, but a lot of times the fatigue is even way worse than just a normal haunting because of how they take your energy. But not only that, it will oftentimes affect your physical health and your mental health.
Absolutely. So it can affect your parts as
Mm-hmm.
well. If you know you've been having some type of spiritual spouse activity, or you are feeling like you do, or even if you're practicing it and you chose to have a spiritual spouse, it can start messing up your insides. Like, especially, I can't speak from a man's perspective, but I have heard from women like cancers, infections, stuff like that. Even if you're not, really active, or, it can really cause a lot of problems down there. And I'm not saying, 'cause I know probably somebody is thinking it, or somebody comes across with this that may not understand our perspective, and that's okay. It's not saying that you're having problems down there means you have a spiritual spouse. I want to, Spirit has really led me to say this, because I also feel like some people that are listening, or that may listen to this, could get somewhat offended if you feel like you're having some of these problems and you start to get, I guess you could say, upset, or feel like you want to lash out. And that's a good time, I guess, to bring it up. It's like, when people try to get close to you, and that could be friendships, relationships, partnerships, any type of loving transition, something will start going off. Extreme paranoia can be part of signs of how this happens. And like, you might have something talking to you in your head that is not very high vibrational, like, and then it's different than having like a gut feeling like this person may not be good for me. No, scenarios, it can cause paranoia, and once these things get close to you, they infiltrate your mind, and they can actually like flip a switch where, you might think irrational things. You might think that people are, trying to take advantage of you when that might not be. And that can, like, there's so many scenarios in that situation too.
Mm-hmm. I want to add too, like the thing you were saying about having illness and whatnot in specific body parts. So I would say out of the seven out of the eight cases that I've had, and of course they were female, that they had this situation, they had like bladder inflammation, uterus, ovary inflammation, or just like inflammation or illnesses in those areas and a lot of pain and stuff. I don't find it to be coincidence when it's seven people out of eight, because at that point it's a pattern. Um, and so I absolutely agree, and I do see that with my clients. And the whole paranoia, it's like they'll do everything they can to sabotage the good things in your life. Because, and also like because of how they get their energy, you're immersed also because there's this, what do you want to call this?
A
It's
combination between 3D energetic, because we're all made of energy. So, and you're more 3D. So these things that are not 3D versus 3D, the energy exchange is still there.
it's the energy exchange between the two, the person being affected and the entity. You're being immersed in their energy. And so that can also lower your vibration, and it can pretty much, I would say,
Cause disease.
it causes disease, but like also infiltrates your mind and how you think because you're in that energy. It brings your mind and thought patterns down to that lower vibration. And so it's like you can sabotage your own relationships, whether they're romantic or just friendly, just based off of that as well.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer in energetic exchange between even living people. Somebody has very low vibrational energy. I mean, your aura exists, everything exists within your consciousness and your aura that's even wrong with your body. So, I mean, you can actually, in my personal opinion, from stories that I've heard, you can actually manifest this from even other people. And even if they're just like super negative, you might actually expel things from your body in different ways from the negativity, because somehow, I can't explain it. I'm not a scientist, but in my personal opinion, there's a correlation between, like we talked about this, the nanoparticles. Like there is something that is, how can I say this? Scientific about it, right? In the way we can explain it as humans, where there is physical matter that is created between, even spirit and a human. There's still physical matter that can be created, and I don't know how to explain that,
String
but
theory.
yeah, string theory. I don't know, but basically, yes, there's physical matter that can exchange back and forth that'll manifest into the physical body because we are 3D, we are solid, right? Well, kind of, but if that makes sense. I know we talked about excessive or low libido. So for men, like women, you can actually have like dysfunctions during intercourse. Okay. And that can be normal, right? There are medical cases, but if you believe you have a succubus energy on you, another thing that I've heard is you can have like other men really kind of start coming at you, bro. Like you end up picking up these traits about you, and sometimes it's just your energy, and you can have other men like being very aggressive towards you if you have a spiritual spouse, or even vice versa. They want and they feed off that low vibrational energy. And I'm sure that there are more, because obviously a lot of men do not contact us about this because, I mean, it kind of makes sense. But there are men that do suffer from that. I've had to pull off a spirit off of somebody that I know very well, that was doing stuff like this to them. And let's just say that BITCH went bye real. She was
Hmm.
ugly. It was ugly. Like it was really ugly. She was normal, but kind of thought for me. And when she opened her mouth, her jaws stretched and you could see all of her teeth. She was like a succubus. It
Hmm.
was like a succubus energy. And it can cloud your mind too, again, in relationships and, lower libido or even over excessive libido, um, promiscuity. Promiscuity. We talked about that. I know we got a couple more, Emily. What else you got?
So I was gonna add on to like attracting certain partners or just people in your life. It's kind of like if you use energy vampires in a way, how like if you're empathic, you're going to attract those that are energy vampires because they feed off of that. Well, it's kind of similar to that, but with the person um that's attracted to you, whether it's male, female. Again, it doesn't matter gender, but like for example, I'll just use a stereotypical relationship of like a man and a female where the female might have the entity attachment and they attract, like you said, maybe abusive uh, partners because the entity likes to feed off of that negative energy, or it attracts somebody that will contribute to the production of more of the energy to feed off of, whether it is abusive or very promiscuous.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the last things that I have to add to this list personally is if you brought it in, and we talked about this, but it's a reminder, like if you brought it in, even if practicing darker things and communicating with darker entities, you've already given them permission to do certain things. And there is a certain level that you can control things, and certain people do that better than others that practice darker occult magic, basically. But many people do not, and you give them permission to come into your life, okay? And then they can just start taking up wherever they want to. So, there may be a time you decided to do something in your life so darker stuff also takes away people's free will as well, and sometimes it don't, depending on if you want to work with that type of energy. It can be beneficial again at first, but once you allow darker energy into your life, you think that it's just one that's coming in that you choose to work with. No, they work in multiples. They work in a union. They're spirits and minions under these higher vibrational beings. And yeah, they're basically meant to
You mean lower vibrational beings?
higher ranking beings and the lower vibrational beings. Yes. So there's a hierarchy to it. So if you're working with something, sometimes you always don't get what you want either. Spirits and that vibration lie. So even though they're lower vibrational, there's still a hierarchy.
Hmm.
So bite off more than you can chew sometimes with that.
And I want to add too, like, if it's intentional, you also have to keep in mind that if you have other people in your house, you're also affecting them. Your pets, your family members, if you live with grandpa or grandma, if you have babies and children, it can also affect them because they're defenseless.
Yeah. And even they, in their own, like, I would say this too, if they're not understanding of what you're doing, that
Mm.
makes them even more defenseless. But at the same time, there's always help for people. Like, but if they don't understand or they don't have a stronger spiritual connection, it's not always going to be there. Like, it'll come in and interfere because as we have free will, sometimes, things like this, I hate to say it like this. Nobody deserves this, but sometimes we go through things like this. So it's a life lesson. And something that I've learned is, over time, that it's always been apparent, but it's became more obvious. There's always going to be light and dark. We have to have the light and dark to learn, right? But there's that excessive light, right? And there's that excessive dark, and you can't get rid of it. I'm not saying anybody deserves a spiritual spouse, but if you're sitting back wondering, like, why me? Maybe it's to help you get stronger now that you know. Like, sometimes we feel victimized, and that victim mentality can continue. And I'm not trying to make this more than it is, but I'm not saying it's anybody's fault either. But keeping that victim mentality and not taking accountability for your actions is what I'm trying to say. Like, nobody deserves to be hurt that way. But I hope that message is loud and clear. When you have something like that happen, we all have to heal. But when you play that card or don't take accountability for your actions and then inadvertently for not taking accountability, you're playing victim, you're still allowing, and this is for your actions, not no actions towards you. Okay, I want to make that very clear. That can allow this kind of stuff in too. And some of the things that we went over for the signs today, um, they can translate to a degree to other paranormal aspects or, spiritual attachments as well.
I wanted to add like some tricks that they could do to kind of like get you to lower your guard or just trick you in general to
Sure.
do whatever they want to do. So, like,
Yeah.
they can pretend to be your spouse. And this has happened to me, okay, where I've had a spirit try to pretend to be my husband. And when I encounter anything, whether it is somebody that I know or someone I've met, I still question it, especially on the astral realm or like in dreams and things, because it is very easy for negative things to shapeshift and to trick all your senses and so on and so forth. So in my situation, this person pretended to be my husband, but I ask questions. I go based off of how I feel because I'm clairsentient and I felt something was off, but I couldn't see what it was because it was almost exact. However, when I went to touch their arms, I so like he has a tattoo on his arm, and when I went to touch his arm, I didn't feel it, and I noticed the tattoo wasn't there, and I'm like, you're not my husband. And it got really offended and kind of like lashed out, and I'm like, you just ruined it for yourself. And so
Hmm.
I was able to be like, nope, get away from me. And that worked. And they can also like sometimes people just chalk it up to dreams, and sometimes people will have natural dreams of people they've met or like their crushes, whether it's like celebrities or not. And sometimes people will have celebrity dreams, and maybe it could be explicit, but you think it's a dream. And it might not necessarily be a dream, and it could be
Yeah.
something pretending and kind of like pulling on your own heartstrings and like using your crushes and things against you, or just pretending to be like a benevolent being, because that's very common. Like archangels, they always try to be somebody else because if the person knew what they actually looked like, they definitely would not want to have anything to do with them. And so there's a lot of trickery with just not just appearance, but energy, sound, and like feeling and overall that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and one way that you can kind of tell in dreams if you're being tricked is like Emily was saying, she gave the example of the tattoo. Sometimes it'll be their teeth,
Or their
sometimes it'll be their
eyes?
eyes, yep, or it'll be something weird about them that looks alike. It can look a lot like them, but something will be off and they can't hold that form. And if you're conscious in your dream, you can always test that spirit. If you're in the waking world and you're connecting with something that's not normally there, always test that spirit, you know. And again, this is something you're not going to have. Yeah, it only takes, I guess, it could take a while to pick up the spiritual spouse, right? It's not just going to happen overnight. Sometimes it can. If the trauma is already there, it can, right? But I just want to say, you know, if you have a random dream sometimes and you wake up and you're like, wow, that was crazy, but you can always say if you're worried about it, you can always denounce it and be like, not today. That's not
Mhm.
me, one off. And if you continue to have these dreams or these experiences, that's when you want to get worried. I mean, that's when you should kind of worry. That's where we're going to move in protection or how you can kind of get rid of a spiritual spouse. Okay, so the first thing for me for protection, if you know this is here and you have identified that you have something, either a spiritual attachment or a spiritual spouse, the first and foremost thing is you have to identify where the origin came from. I figured that a long time ago when we did origins, season one origins. We have to figure out where the origin is because once we figure out where this infiltration is and what we're doing based on how you can pick it up and the signs that you have it, you can figure out where it came from. A lot of times, the person in the trenches, if they're deeply in the trenches of something like this, they may not be able to see it, but you can always seek spiritual advisement or advisory through an outside source based on your personal spiritual or religious practices. So, determining the origin, you have to determine that and you have to heal that. This is not something that you're just going to be able to get out your damn sage away and start spraying away. This is not how this works because yes, it can be external, right? But this is an internal attachment at this point. And internal means haunted person. That's just a term that we use, haunted person, haunted place, haunted object. It can be elaborated on, but this is a personal issue you're having. And then again, it can be internal. So it's attacking you from internal standpoints. It is an emotional thread. So you have to heal that. And you don't just heal that always with your just spiritually, it's a mind, body, spirit trauma release. So protection, that's one form of protection. And I'll say this: one way you can do that is through Reiki as well. Reiki healing would work, and reaching out for spiritual advisory. And Emily, I know you got a couple if you want to say.
Therapy. Heal that with
Mhm.
therapy. There's nothing wrong with therapy. I know it's kind of like, I don't know, people look down on it, but now it's becoming more popular and standard. And so there's nothing wrong with therapy. Sometimes the only way to heal yourself is to identify what needs to be healed and come up with coping mechanisms for those things. And the best person to help you with that is a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So, yeah. And I feel like too, when you're protecting yourself, you have to do your mind, body, and spirit kind of simultaneously. So, yes, you do need to cleanse the environment and yourself. But like Chastity said, you have to do the internal work, the internal healing at the same time. And this isn't something that's going to go away overnight. This is going to take time. Um, and then you can go into your physical protection with your Palo Santo and your copal and your frankincense. I would use those specifically because they're a bit stronger than the sage and Palo Santo duo, but that's just my opinion. Holy oil can help you with if you're having issues at nighttime and you're being touched and you're having those dreams, the holy oil will definitely help you. I've only found one person where it didn't help, but the reason behind that is more so because of how she was raised in a different religion. Okay, so she wasn't Christian or Catholic, and so that way might not work if you were raised, whether you were raised through Islam or Hinduism or stuff like that. But I would say the majority of the time, the holy oil is amazing and it works. Chastity, your turn.
Divine intervention is your most important tool because what she was speaking of, they're all tools like the sage, Palo Santo, holy oil, whatever your root belief is in those spiritual practices and for protection, use it. But those are just tools.
Mhm.
Divine intervention of, in my opinion, which is God to me, okay, whatever that may be for you, I respect that. For me, this is what works, right? Divine intervention and calling for help. Like, no, these issues, you're healing your trauma is a better way, I think, to say it. Healing your trauma does not happen overnight, but can you break by denouncing this thing? Once you catch it and you're ready to release it, you can get rid of it pretty quick. But there is always cracks and crumbs that are left behind that have to be cleaned up. That's where this trinity of mind, body, spirit is connecting, and it's connecting through your emotions. So pay attention to that, equaling out your commotions. Yeah, equaling out the commotions of your emotions. Like that's a big sign. It's like your emotions are everywhere, and you're up and down and left and right. Um, let's see. Yeah, stop the protection. Too. You have to stop doing the things that were triggering it in the first place as well. So watching, I would say excessive corn, right? Because I don't need to go into that, but if it's a problem, it's not something I prefer personally to do, but people do it, but it ends up causing an emotional disconnect from your 3D partner, which allows room for that spiritual partner to come in. That's why you hear, even in like Christianity, for example, saying that I'm not personally a Christian, but I believe in Jesus and I think he's very helpful. But I don't believe in doing it for that reason because you lower those senses with an actual physical 3D partner, especially for men. And it can happen for women, just maybe in another way. Okay. The PG-13, I guess today, or mature audience, but y'all can kind of get what I'm saying here. And let's see what else. I know I wrote some things down. Oh, and the last thing, and I don't Emily will have to add, but the last thing I'm going to add for spiritual protection, one of the things that I do and that has worked for other people is anytime you make a spiritual connection or energy thread with a spirit that you see in dreams or in your mind's eye, with your connection, call in for divine guidance and visualize that being or entity being evaporated by the love and light from the universe, from your creator, from God, from Jesus, your whoever is a part of your religion. The light is still a part of all these higher vibrational beings. They're all in the universal light and love. And bring in that energy and basically start evaporating those images. If they're very clear in your mind from your dreams, or they're very clear from you actually picking them up intuitively, bring that light in and just choose to flush it out. I mean, literally, it's like pouring a glass of water into a cup of coffee. You just keep pouring that light in until it's clear. And then eventually that can happen in seconds, that can happen in minutes. It might take a couple meditation sessions, depends on how strong you are with it. You will dissolve that connection that way as well. And then you have to be proactive on keeping it away. So that's all I'm personally going to add for protection. I know, Emily, you might have a few more things you want to finish us off with today.
I was gonna say like that want of actually getting rid of it because you can go through the motions, but if you don't actually want it to go away or you want to entertain it in any way, you have to have that intention of it needing to go bye-bye. Because otherwise, all you're doing is you're just wasting your time. Like you have to want it to go bye-bye or it'll stay. So that also means no communicating with it. Don't use your spirit boxes to see what is around and who it is. You don't need to know that. You don't need to know that. And again, that just furthers the connection and making it want to stay or just keeping it there. That's like the permission of it to stay, and you do not want that. Um, and yeah, don't be using Ouija boards, don't use your pendulums, don't use your dowsing rods to communicate with it. I'm not saying you can't use those things, but don't use anything or attempt to communicate with that.
Yeah, it's important. Just sever ties. If you're not ready to let go, it will not let go. And in a relationship, some people may not feel like they can be open with their spouse, especially, if you are not in this together or they meaning like spirituality differences. But I think it is important to let your spouse know because it could translate over into them. So it will require certain type of counseling, particularly spiritual counseling between marriages and long-term partnerships. So yeah, you've got to be ready to release it, like she said, and let it go, or it's not going to go anywhere. You have to be ready to commit to change, or I mean, I'm going to speak very frankly, you're wasting everybody's time if you're not. And it's not like you don't want to try, but if you know in your heart and you reach out for spiritual help and then you wonder why it's not helping because I mean, if you know in your heart that you want to let it go, reach out for spiritual help, get it done, but you have to make that decision for yourself, whether you're not working with light or dark stuff, doesn't matter. Just normal people, same thing. It goes the same way. But if you're a person working with the darker arts, you have to give all of that up. I think that's very important to say. And there may be people that do that and disagree with me. That's just my opinion. You've got to work through your stuff. Okay. So,
And maintain your cleansings because
yeah,
you can cleanse and do your healing and stuff. And then if you don't continue it and you leave space and it's been weeks or months and you haven't kept up with it, it can come back.
absolutely.
Especially through the cracks that, let's say, even if you heal your trauma, well, what if you drink one night and you get drunk and it can come back in that way, or any other crack, and even health issues, whether or not you have like a chronic illness, it can come back through any kind of like whatchamacalls it's.
Specifically your issues. So, like, for
Mhm.
example, how Emily was saying alcohol, if alcohol was your problem and you can't control it and you relapse, same thing with other substances or addictions to corn, right? So, and if you slip up, don't beat yourself up, okay? Just know that it was a slip up and accept the fact that we are human, we make mistakes, ask for divine guidance if you need help and move along. Okay. So, yeah, it can bring it back, but don't let it, if it does kind of come back, it's not like you're going to bust in and have a dream that night. But I mean, it could, but that is so very rare. So, I don't want to make people fearful. Like, we're not trying to be fear mongers. We're just explaining experiences based on what we picked up from other people and sometimes personal experiences. Sometimes you didn't, and there are times when this will be the last thing I add. There are some times when you are working towards helping people on a path like me and Emily. There has been times that I've had things try to come do that to me to get in and be touched and stuff like that. And you have to set a boundary. You are living, you are more powerful, and what you have on your side is more powerful too.
Exactly, same.
All right, guys. Yep. So that pretty much wraps it up. If you have any questions, we can do our best to try to answer it in the description box down below. We'd really appreciate it if you would give us a like and subscribe if you were the first time, or if it's your first time being here. Also, me and Emily have our own personal channels. I have the Luminary Luna Beams, where I talk about astrology and spiritual guidance. I also have our Appalachian Nightmare, which is my paranormal investigation channel. Oh, yeah, that's right. She's wearing one of my shirts. I love it. Thank you. And Emily, do you want to drop your channel name?
Yep. Fine Art Medium, the Fine Art Medium, one word. That's on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. And yeah.
Yep. And we'll put our links to our link trees in the description box down below. We are psychic mediums that specialize in the paranormal and spiritual guidance. We do offer services, guys, and I think we're both looking to book now. So if y'all need any type of spiritual guidance, me and Emily both offer those services. So I think that's all for now. And guys, I guess until next time, peace out.
Peace out.
Hey, if you have a haunted story you want to share, you can email us at lightsatmidnightpodcast@gmail.com. Get in touch with us there. We'd love to hear from you. We really appreciate y'all hanging around and checking it out. And yeah, thank you so much. We are super excited to bring you some super awesome content. We really appreciate you guys checking us out.
Thank you to all that took the time to listen to this week's episode. Your support means the world to us. And remember, all of us have the ability to shine brightly and shed positivity even in the darkest of places. Stay safe, stay well, and light it up!